How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella. I am the Kansas City Chiefs beat writer on SI and the host of the Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. Thank you guys so much for stopping in today as we continue on with our 2025 expectations for Kansas City Chiefs players. We've covered the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill, Jerry Tillery recently. Yesterday, we just covered Trent McDuffie. And today, we are going to be adding on another person to that list. But first, just some housekeeping stuff. As I've told you before, I will keep reminding you until we get closer and closer. As we know, the Kansas City Chiefs, they have their training camp on the 21st of July, with practice being the 22nd, and then it goes until the midpoint of August, which means football is right around the corner, and the Kansas City Chiefs, they look like a team that doesn't want to mess around at all. They look like, from what we've heard through interviews and their practices, this team's ready for some revenge, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. But today, we're going to be talking about their second-round draft pick from the 2025 NFL Draft, defensive tackle Omarr Norman-Lott. Today, we're going to be talking about the expectations that I have for Norman-Lott, as well as dissecting and kind of going back to an old topic that we've touched on before as we get closer and closer to the 2025 NFL campaign. So without further ado, let's break it down. As we know, Omarr Norman-Lott, the second-round draft pick, I will go on record in saying that I was a little surprised to see that Omarr Norman-Lott went in the second round because of his projection. He was projected to be a third or fourth round pick, but as we know, as I've covered several times on the podcast thus far, a lot of things stood out for the Kansas City Chiefs when addressing the defensive line. They needed to, and Omarr Norman-Lott is a guy that can be molded. He's a guy that already possesses, God-given talents for the game of football, and the Chiefs feel confident, and they wouldn't have drafted him in the second round if they didn't feel that he was the best option to go after. As we know, in 2024, he had 27 pressures on 139 pass rush snaps. He is excited to be in Kansas City. And as the defensive line in the success, or I guess in the guy ahead of him in Mike Penal, now that he's getting older, it's important that the Chiefs add in a guy like Omarr Norman-Lott. On ESPN's depth chart, he is listed as the second string, which makes sense as he would need to kind of develop into that role. And this is a good season to do so. And before we get into the expectations throughout his collegiate career, he played in 44 games. He had 89 combined tackles with 13 and a half sacks. Now, I personally don't think that the defensive line, or especially on the defensive tackle area, is a major concern for the Kansas City Chiefs. You got the likes of Chris Jones, but as we know, Chris Jones can't do it all. So bringing in a guy like Omarr Norman-Lott seems like a good thing to do. But as we're looking at it right now, it seems as though he's going to kind of be a backup option. And that's fine. We see that a lot from rookies coming into the NFL. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to expect anything less. Similarly to Josh Simmons, the Chiefs 2025 first-round draft pick, I have some high expectations for Omarr Norman-Lott, not just for this season, but for the next 4 years. He's a second-round pick, and a lot of the times we would like to see the Kansas City Chiefs front office bring in talent that they know can develop well into the future. So I'm expecting Omarr Norman-Lott to be exactly that. In terms of statistics for this season, I would go as far as saying that he's not going to be on the field all that often compared to like Josh Simmons, but I am expecting for when he is on the field, he's going to make an impact. In a perfect world, he would play in 16, 17 games for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I am expecting him to kind of be around like the 22 total tackle mark, with also recording around 2.5 quarterback sacks. I think that he's got enough on tape to show, at least to show us from people who don't necessarily know the background of Omarr Norman-Lott. I think that the size of his hands and the way that he can disrupt that offensive line on the defensive line, I think it's going to benefit very well. So I would say that a lot of his tackles might be more assisted, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be any less valuable. As he continues to grow and picks the brains of the veterans ahead of him, as well as work closely with defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, I have got no fear that Omarr Norman-Lott is going to be able to develop into a top star in the National Football League. A lot of the times, some of these guys, second round picks and third round picks and beyond, they kind of get overlooked because of their status in the draft. So long as the Kansas City Chiefs know how to utilize Omarr Norman-Lott, I'm fully expecting him to kind of progressively get better as the season goes on. He was not at all horrible in his collegiate career. Now that he's going to be able to bring it over, they've already had into the Kansas City Chiefs organization. Several have already discussed that they have high hopes for him, as well as the expectations being high. He's a good kid, so to say. But that all is all nice to touch on. But one thing that still remains, not only for Omarr Norman-Lott, but other second-round draft picks have yet to sign their contracts. Other than the first two draft picks in the second round getting fully guaranteed contracts, that has kind of skewed the timeline of when second round draft picks are going to sign. Because the problem is that now that these agents know that NFL franchises are kind of, or the fully guaranteed contracts are bleeding from the first round into the second round, there needs to kind of be an established stopping point. And who is to say where that stopping point is? As we know, Omarr Norman-Lott was drafted near the back end of the second round, given the Chiefs' success in the 2024 campaign. But he's still not signed to his rookie contract. Obviously, they will find a way to sign him, much like the other 30 players that they have to sign. Not the Chiefs, the NFL. I'm talking about the second round in general. But touching on that, I think that it shouldn't trickle down past the first 10, meaning that if I'm expecting Omarr Norman-Lott to not get a fully guaranteed contract. Not to say that he's not deserving of it, but just because it kind of defeats the purpose of being a first-round pick, in my opinion. While the first few picks are in the second round, that's fine. There needs to kind of be an established point in stopping. Unfortunately for Omarr Norman-Lott, I think that his landing spot in the NFL draft is a little bit further out from that spot that needs to be the cutoff. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check out me over on X at Dom Minchella, as well as at Kansas City Chiefs, KC Chiefs on SI. A lot of good stories are getting published as we get closer and closer to the 2025 NFL campaign. I'm excited to keep on covering it for you, and I'm excited for the team to continuously cover the training camp period into the season. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to one another, and I'll see you tomorrow.